All right, Alex. You had Elliot Wolf talk yesterday, and he said they would absolutely be willing to swing a trade late in the preseason. And then it's come out that they're interested in the edge rusher from Cincinnati, Trey Hendrickson, and all these things. Where do you stand on that? Obviously, just Elliot Wolf can't say, "Oh no, we're completely opposed to doing something." That
right.
You can't take that off the table. So I mean, but it's fun to speculate on. If you're Elliot Wolf, is there any? First of all, do you go after Hendrickson, or is there holes you'd fill by giving up draft capital?
No, Fred, I think you nailed it. Like, he's obviously he was asked kind of vaguely, would you give up a first round pick if it made the team better? Which obviously the answer is going to be yes. When it comes to Hendrickson, 30 years old, needs a new contract, I'd be a little hesitant to give up a first round pick. If it was a second and a day 3 pick, I think I would do that. The big hole on this defense right now, well, they have a lot of nice complementary rushers. That linchpin guy, think kind of the receiver room, right? The guy they've been missing, the guy that's going to dictate the way the other team has to scheme things. You drop that guy into this defense with this secondary, and I think you're talking about a unit that could be top 5. So, but he is 30 years old. There is a shorter window on that. So I'm not completely out on the idea of Hendrickson, but the reports are Cincinnati wants a first-round pick, if not more. I think that's probably too much for a guy who's 30 years old and needs a new contract. I think, if they're going to be parting with the first round pick, I think you're probably talking about Micah Parsons, who's probably going to go for more than one first round pick if he gets dealt at all. So if the price comes down, like, the Patriots should stay engaged, I think. But a first round pick is probably a little too rich for a team that isn't exactly one player away from competing for a Super Bowl.
If you're Elliot Wolf, do you take the big swing? You brought up Micah Parsons. Obviously, it's going to take more than a first-round pick.
Right.
For a guy like that in his mid-20s who's a game record that you can obviously pay, considering the salary cap room you have, would you take a big swing at that guy?
If it's one first-round pick, yeah, I would. There's not a lot of comparisons for a trade like this, so take this with a grain of salt. But you look at the kind of comparable trades that have been made, that's 3 first-round picks or more. The Patriots need all that capital because they don't need just one player. By the time Parsons hits 30 without those draft picks, are the Patriots really going to be in a contention window? As good as he is, he single-handedly has not helped what is a better Cowboys roster have any success in the postseason. So I'm not opposed to it exactly, but I just think he's going to cost too much if he gets dealt at all, which I still don't think he will.
Is there another way to effectively spend the money that they have left over right now other than trading for someone who's going to cost a bunch of money after the trade? I mean, I'm not necessarily interested in spending the money just because you have it. That seems foolish, but it's there, and there's.
And then also, Artie, the question is, you hear people complaining about they have this much money. Is that, like, Alex, can you think of something that they could have gotten in free agency that someone outspent for that would have made a huge difference this year and into the future?
Not in free agency, no. Now, if they'd been maybe more aggressive on DK Metcalf and paid him, that would be the one thing I think of. But, these wide receivers come available every year. Every time I hear, they missed it on the wide receiver. And I was hearing that after DeAndre Hopkins. And look who's become available since then. Ayuk, Metcalf, maybe Terry McLaurin. I'm sure there'll be guys next year that want to get paid or want out of their respective situations. So to answer the original question, Hardy, the cap rolls over. So that's basically how you spend it. You go out next year, and they do need to make external additions. Christian Gonzalez is also looking at what's going to be a very significant contract. Outside of a trade, I don't know how you spend that money this year, but it will benefit them going into next season.
All right, let's talk about some of your roster projections here. We've been talking a lot about the running backs. What do you think the Patriots are going to do?
So I have 4 on. The 3 that everybody considers lock: Stevenson, Henderson, and Gibson. I also put Jermichael Hasty on. I know he signed late. I just think since he got here, his usage has reflected that of a player the team plans on keeping. Now, maybe they could get him to the practice squad and elevate him, but he's going to contribute on special teams, and he's a plus special teams player. And he gives you some running back depth where you have Ramondre Stevenson, who's dealing with something here going into the start of the regular season. He was wearing a red non-contact jersey. So we've seen the last few years how quick running back depth can evaporate. There was a game, I think 2 years ago, where they suddenly only had one healthy running back on the roster. Like, it happened very quickly. So Hasty is a guy that if he's your 4th running back, if you need him to carry the ball a few times a game, he can handle himself. not quite the same level as Brandon Bolden, but sort of reminds me of that guy. So I had those 4 on.
Okay, so Cold Strange, who would have thought he could have been a bust?
Who saw that coming?
Except for every other team and draft analyst. But
And the majority of us in the media.
Yeah, whether he played for some
Certainly not
mid-major.
Sean McVay.
Yeah,
No.
he played. Well, yes, exactly. Apparently not Sean McVay.
Right.
If you remember, McVay made a sarcastic comment
We
after
thought
the
he was going to
draft.
be available in the 4th round.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he played without gloves. That is big news. But like there's talk of him not making the team. The left side of that line is up in the air. There's talk of them needing at least to add depth from cuts that other teams make. Does Cole Strange make this team? What's your analysis of the offensive line at this point?
So I put Cole Strange on. I had 10 offensive linemen. I may end up changing that by the time I do my final roster projection next week. The only way Cole Strange makes it is if it's essentially one of these things where they're still trying to figure out their starting left guard. They're still trying to figure out their center, and they're just going to continue the competition into the regular season, kind of like they did at tackle last year, which obviously isn't great, but it's something that teams do, especially with how restrictive contact is in these training camp practices. You don't get a lot of time to evaluate offensive linemen. But if they're not going to do that, I mean, of the 10 guys I had on, he's probably 10th. Ben Brown, once he started playing guard, that was a bad sign for Cole Strange, because the one thing Cole Strange had going for him was the versatility. You usually don't keep a backup interior lineman who can only play one position, right? Who can only play left guard or can only play center. Ben Brown had only played center to that point. Cole Strange could play center and guard. Now that Ben Brown's playing guard, Cole Strange is kind of struggling at center. He had 2 bad snaps yesterday. They're going to keep Ben Brown over him. The only thing is if Ben Brown ends up starting, right? Maybe they move Jared Wilson to center, Ben Brown's at left guard. Well, now you still need that multi-position backup, and that would basically be how Cole Strange would have to make the roster.
We've talked at length about the offensive line, just like you have, and I'm looking at the joint practices with Minnesota, which weren't necessarily great for the offense, and then the number 1 offense on Saturday didn't look great. Should we be worried about this, or is this just regular stuff getting ready for the regular season?
It's a little bit of both. Like, I don't think it's as bad as last year. Some of the stuff from the joint practices, like I trust Will Campbell. I think he'll figure it out. I think he'll be fine. Morgan Moses is still limited. Right? Like, once he's back out there, he should be stabilizing. It's still not great. I think their ceiling is a top 20 offensive line in the league. Now, that's much better than 32nd, but it's still not great. The thing that worries me is I think that the starting 5 we've seen for most of the summer, Campbell, Wilson, Bradbury, Onwenu, and Moses, I think that group is okay. As soon as you start pulling 1 or 2 guys out, though, it really turns into a house of cards. And odds are all 5 guys are not going to play 17 games across the board. So that's where I'm nervous, is once they start having to go to backups, or if Garrett Bradbury regresses, or if Morgan Moses regresses, or Will Campbell doesn't figure it out, like, it can get bad pretty quickly.
All right, you saw May play. First of all, do you think he plays on, what is it, Thursday? Do you think he plays on Thursday night? And are you getting any vibe of his readiness as this preseason goes on?
It's tough to, like, Vrabel seems to want to play guys. I don't know. Usually the starters don't play in this 3rd game if they've played in the first 2. In terms of his readiness, I think the big thing is that just getting himself mentally set early in games. I know Zoe talked about it earlier this week, just not having those sprays, those inaccurate throws early in the games. That's the big thing that stood out to me. I don't know how much one drive in the preseason is going to help him learn the Josh McDaniels offense at this point, right? I think he has a pretty good grasp of it. I don't know that one drive is going to help more, especially since they're getting into scout team stuff now in practice, and I think that's where they're really picking it up. So
we're just trying to figure out if Fred is going to watch the game or not, and that is entirely dependent on the number of starters and how long they play.
So Vrabel said yesterday they hadn't determined yet. The fact they hadn't means I think the door's still open. If they play, I think it's going to be the same thing we've seen. I think it's going to be 1, maybe 2 drives. It's not going to be the dress rehearsal 3rd preseason game like he used to be.
Yeah. It's all messed up now. You don't know what to expect. All right, Kyle Duggar, not going to be there?
I don't think so. I was on the fence, and then he has that near fumble on the last play, and that – I know it's a preseason game and ultimately the outcome doesn't matter, but you look at the situation he's in, and that's what this time of year is. You're judging guys off of that. That's the exact kind of play I feel like this coaching staff has been preaching cutting out of the organization since they got here, right? It's a bad football play. It's not a high IQ football play. Can just go down, end the game, tries to run it out for no reason, gets the ball punched out. That seems like the kind of thing they've been preaching getting rid of. So when you have a guy that's on the fence already, makes that sort of play. Now, there's financial implications. They really don't save any money if they cut him. I actually think they ultimately save more money if they hold on to him through this year, I believe, and then cut him at the end of the year. So there is still that thing, but he's being used on the scout team. He had that bad fumble. I mean, just football-wise, it's all pointing to him not being on the team.
All right. Well, Alex Barth, read him, watch him, 985thesportshub.com. Alex, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me, guys.
For all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.